Well, we got it going on now, Honesty.
Right. That was a super cool video. That last picture of me. I don't know about that though. But hi everyone. I am Honesty Liller. I am the co-founder of Care Talks and a woman in long-term recovery myself for over 13 years. And thank you for joining us live tonight. This is our first time doing Care Talks in what, 3.5 years, John, now? Virtual. So bear with us. We have 8 amazing speakers. We're trying to do some technical difficulties as well we're going through, so bear with us. But thank you for joining us here. And then we have 4 speakers that are amazing and speaking on addiction solutions. And then we'll have an intermission break to go grab a bite to eat or whatever. And then we'll have 4 more speakers after that. So thank you for being here. Lots of information tonight. So thank you. And I will hand it over to co-founder John Shinholzer.
Thank you very much, Honesty. John Shinholzer here, also co-founder of Care Talks, also a person in long-term recovery from substance use disorders. For me, that means I've been clean and sober almost 38 years. And one really cool thing about being in the recovery space for so long, you meet some great people. We got some great people coming to you tonight. Our first speaker is Anthony Grimes, a young man I met a few years back as he was going through his journey, developing this wonderful story, of which one day he'll be a great banquet speaker, I'm sure, and he gets to share all this good stuff. But he went into the recovery house business. He's really good at it. He's the executive director of the Virginia Association of Recovery Residences. He's a rising warrior in the recovery space, and he's our first speaker tonight. So without further ado, let's have a warm welcome for Anthony Grimes. Take it away, Anthony.
Thank you, John. That was nice, Todd. Thanks, John and Honesty, for asking me to be a part of this tonight. My name is Anthony Grimes, and I serve as the executive director of the Virginia Association of Recovery Residences. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and what that means to me is I haven't found it necessary to use any mood or mind-altering substances in over 5.5 years. And it wasn't always like that for me. I grew up in a family that suffered from addiction. Later on in life, I would find out that my family, going back 5 generations, every single male had suffered from substance use disorder in one form or another. So, I was predisposed, so to speak, to addiction. My dad, he's in recovery today. And, I grew up around recovery. I would go to 12-step meetings with my dad, and I knew the language and I knew the people. And I was one of those guys that thought that I would outsmart the disease of addiction. That was what I really thought. And, I can remember at the bitter ends of my using career, I was living in different mental institutions. I would go from hospital to hospital and stay anywhere from 10 days to a month if I could. up in their mental ward, you know. And I remember thinking that, you know, I was living pretty good at that time. But, you know, at the end of that journey, what happened was that my dad came and picked me up from the last facility I was at. And he brought me up to the McShin Foundation. And he paid my rent for about a month, gave me a grocery card. And he told me, don't ever call him to ask him for anything else, you know. And you know, I knew he was serious at that point. You know, that was where I knew that there was no longer a safety net for me. And when he dropped me off up there, and you know, he cut me off. And from there, what happened was that, you know, I was exposed to recovery for the first time and identifying as being a person with substance use disorder. And the McShin Foundation did something very special for me. You know, I can remember it vividly. There was a day where they took us all up to this Lake Anna, and we had the ability to go out and to cook out and do all these things. It was a big recovery gathering. And I got back to the recovery residence that night, and I remembered that was the first day that I hadn't thought about using, and I can't tell you how many years. That was the first day that I actually had some fun without thinking about using. And I got to thinking, man, you know, this recovery residence stuff is pretty cool, man. Like, I had no responsibility other than to work and pay my rent and stay clean and go to meetings. And, you know, I'd like to tell you that I stayed clean from that point on, but I didn't. You know, I ended up relapsing, and, you know, multiple times. And that ended up with me going into the Department of Corrections. And that was the launching pad for me to find recovery and sustain long-term recovery. You know, there was a pivotal moment. I was in the Department of Corrections. This is over 5.5 years ago. And I remember my birthday was coming up, and it was another birthday spent incarcerated. And I was sitting there, and, you know, I was looking to the left of me, and I saw a lot of young guys playing cards and chopping it up and doing what they do. And then I looked to the right of me, and I saw a bunch of old dudes who were on their 6th trip down this road. And then I thought to myself, you know what? This could be me. This could be my life if I don't really do something different, man. And, you know, I got to thinking at that point right there, man, that, you know, it's easy to be successful in America. And the reason that is because when most people are told no, they quit, they give up. And the key to success was to just not give up for me, man. You know, it wasn't my first go around, but I had another opportunity. I was alive for a reason. And that seed was planted at the McShin Foundation for me to realize that when I got out with about $1,400 that I had saved from working at the work camp. And I went exactly back to the McShin Foundation. Now, they didn't have room for me when I got back, so I went to another recovery resident that they had referred me to. And that was the launching pad for my recovery, man. If it had not been for the exposure into a recovery residence the very first time when I got there, then I would have not known that there was a solution and a supportive environment for me to recover in, man. And so I went back, and that was the beginning of this journey that I've been on for 5.5 years now. And I can tell you that recovery residences, to me, you know, when I got out and I started my first recovery residence, you know, I leaned on John and honesty and the people that have been doing this for a lot of guidance. And the thing that they taught me was that standards matter. The way we treat individuals, the proper levels of support that we give to people who are coming to us asking for help, the ability to take people in less than an hour and take them off the street or out of a bad environment and put them in a warm, safe bed around people that care about them and are coming together for the common bond of recovery. I don't know any other organizations in the world that can offer that type of support. That in an hour's time, somebody can go directly from the street and into a safe, supportive environment that's trying to help them in their recovery, man. And you know what, man? You know, I learned from the experience of being around, man, that there is an army of people that need our help out there. To me, people with substance use disorder are the most underserved population almost in America when we talk about equitable access to services. And when I look at the Richmond and Henrico area in the metropolitan area, there's over 650 sober living beds that are certified in this area. That's the capacity of another jail. We can eliminate one of our city or our county jails by diverting people into recovery residences for much cheaper and give them a way better experience than they could get being incarcerated. So when we look at recovery residences and the ability to build capacity, that's one thing that we have. We as a recovery community have the ability to build capacity at a rapid rate. We can serve the need that our community has for diverting people into getting services. And the great thing about it is we got so many pathways to recovery, man. You know, you got 12-step and you got plant therapy emerging, and you got, you know, all these different pathways of recovery, which has changed over the years. And the cool thing about it is that when people come into a recovery residence, they're empowered to start making some decisions for themselves to figure out which pathway fits them, and they get the guidance of the peer support. That is the most authentic, organic launch pad that anybody could ever have the opportunity to be in. And I know it changed my life in ways that I can't even begin to describe. When I first got into the recovery residence, when I came home from the Department of Corrections, I had no hope or no dream of being in the recovery residence space. I wanted to get myself together and figure out what it is that I was supposed to be doing, man. And, you know, my higher power has some different thoughts for me in my life. And I tell you, I got that first recovery residence and I saw some people who came in there in that very first residence that I lived in and that I managed. And as a matter of fact, it was the same recovery residence that was the last one that I had gotten kicked out of for using. And there were some young men that came in that house while I was there and first opened it that had got their lives together, and I was able to see the light bulb come on. I mean, I was able to see lives changed by being in that recovery residence. And then that propelled me to open more. And then I got involved with different standards training and got involved with VARR because I wanted to do things the right way. I wanted to uphold the national standards set forth by NAR. And I just can't tell you the impact that recovery residents have had. If you ask me right now, where is the largest number of people early in recovery that are gaining sustained recovery, I'm going to tell you, I firmly believe it's in a recovery residence. To me, that is ground zero. That is boots on the ground. That is the front lines of diverting people out of our criminal justice system and into a recovery residence that can help save their life, restore their family, and change what the next 20 years look like for that person, you know? So I don't want to take up too much time this evening. I know it's time for me to wrap this up. You know, I can tell you recovery residences are doing some of the best work and are the most underfunded population that we have out there. Our recovery residence operators need the help of our community. They need the help of our state government. They need the help of our federal government. I mean, you heard what I said earlier. We can eliminate building jails and divert people into a recovery residence. I mean, that gives us the opportunity to change more lives than our correction system could ever hope to change. You want to talk about rehabilitation? Let's expose them to recovery, man. Let's give them an opportunity to make some decisions that could change their life. I can tell you one thing, it changed my life. So I appreciate the McShin Foundation for having me on. Thank you very much.
Great talk, Anthony. Great talk. Next up, we got Sam Davis, who's a local interventionist here in the Central Virginia area, also a person in recovery. And I'm going to even characterize as a rapidly rising warrior in the recovery space. And more important, he's making a big difference in our community. And Sam, I'm really proud to introduce you to our Care Talk. So take it away, Sam.
talk, Anthony. That was some good stuff. Gave me chills to hear what you were talking about. Sam Davis, I am a person in long-term recovery from substance use disorder, and I've been sober. If I can hold it together, and if the world can hold it together until July 20th of this year, I'll have 11 years of sobriety. For that, I'm extremely grateful. I started going to 12-step meetings in 2003, 2002, 2003. Entered the doors of first time entered the doors of a treatment center was 2003. I bounced around and ended up in 5 treatment centers. I'd go to 30-day places and come out and go right back to doing what I was doing. And you know, I knew that I was created to be something much different than a person in active addiction. It was quite a struggle. It was quite this internal struggle of knowing that I was meant for greater things, but being unable to stop doing what I was doing. You know, I can remember driving my truck down to the drug dealer's house and having my hand on the steering wheel, crying, and just tears running down my face, and gripping the steering wheel, not wanting to go to the drug dealer's house, but not being able to turn around. And, you know, normal people don't really understand that. And I couldn't even understand it. But, you know, I've got the disease of addiction and alcoholism, and it's run in my family tree, and it was passed down generation to generation. We've got a family cemetery that's you know, every male, kind of like Anthony was talking about, every male in our family suffered from alcoholism. And, you know, due to my family, I mean, I've got to put this on my family. My family, they literally were loving me to death. I'd come out of treatment, and they, you know, that I'd get recommendations from a treatment center to, you know, you're going to want to go to sober living and go to recovery residence. And I'm like, nah, I'm not going to do that. I don't need that. I need to go back to work. And I always thought that really drugs were my problem. The drugs and alcohol were my problem. And I thought that if I just stayed away from them and went to treatment and dried out, that then I come out and just, you know, focus on work, or focus on the wife, or focus on this and focus on that I'd be okay. And I would get out of treatment and go right back to doing what I was doing. And my family didn't know any better. My family didn't. They were doing the best they could do, driven by the emotions that they were having of fear that they were going to lose me, and that they did everything, their instincts kicked in as parents to try and save me and protect me and change my mind and change my course. But really what was happening in hindsight is they didn't, you know, I'm not blaming them at all, but they were just doing the best they could do, as many families do. But what they were doing was good motives, but it was actually keeping me sick, because what was happening is they were robbing me of the desperation that I needed in order to surrender to such a foreign concept in my head as recovery. That was such a foreign thing to me that, you know, I was looking at these steps on the wall. I was looking at, you know, the therapists and all the stuff that I was engaging in. Well, I was sitting in, I wasn't engaging. And it just seemed so foreign to me. And I really didn't, you know, I wouldn't grab a hold of it because I wasn't desperate enough. So I bounced in and out of treatment. You know, I got 2 kids. I love my kids dearly. I love them more than air. And I couldn't sober up for them. I love my family, and I couldn't sober up for them. What happened is my family got sick and tired of being driven by my addiction. And my mother went and got some work done around some codependency stuff. And she got active in getting well from me. She got active in taking a stance and setting boundaries around me and my addiction. And my dad followed suit. My sister joined the team. So what they did is they kind of built this corral of really strong boundaries around me and stopped enabling me. And that very quickly created desperation in me, because like Anthony said, I didn't have a safety net. I didn't have anything to fall back on. I mean, if they were still providing me the things that they were providing me, thinking that they were helping me, I'd be smoking crack today. I'd be, if I lived it that long, which I probably wouldn't have, I'd be drinking today. I'd be still doing what I was doing. But I walked into a probation office one day, and they there was this interventionist there, and my family said, you can go to prison or you can go to treatment today. It's your choice. We hope you choose the right choice, but if you don't, that's your experience that you're going to have. And I went to, I sat there and think about it, and whether I want to go to prison or want to go to treatment. And I mean, any sane person would pick treatment, but I'm sitting there like a fool thinking about what I wanted to do. And I chose treatment. And it was a minimum of a year-long program. And, they said it was a 6 to 10 month program. I don't think Jesus Christ himself could have gotten out of there in 6 months, but, it was tough. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but it was the best thing for me. And when I got out of treatment, my family did not enable me. I had $150 in a trash bag full of clothes, and I had to make it happen. What was I going to do? Was I, every time if my family came in and rescued me, why would I have to rely on a power greater than myself? Why would I have to rely on this fellowship? Why would I have to do these things, right? So when my family backed away and took care of themselves in a healthy way, I was left with desperation, and all of my options to do anything else except get well or die were gone. So that's what happened. It was the greatest thing and the most painful thing that's ever happened to me. It was really, really painful to in early recovery. I'm not gonna lie. It's and I say, man, most of my most profound spiritual experiences really sucked on the front end. But on the other side of that is a life of freedom and abundance. I thought that sobriety meant sitting on my hands, fighting off the urge to drink and use drugs for an hour at a time, one day at a time. But that's not what it is. Sobriety is about freedom. It's about being a part of the world, not isolated from it. I'm not a rock star, or, I don't have a jet or anything like that, but I've got a simple house. I enjoy cutting my grass. I enjoy just had the simple things in life, and I'm so grateful for it. And one of the most important things for me too was I went to a recovery residence where I had guys holding me accountable, guys there for support, and it gave me the ability to get back on my feet and trust God and clean house and help others. And I'm really grateful for the struggle that my family allowed me to have. I'm grateful for that today. And so that's what I do in my work, is I help families set some boundaries and make some changes in their life. And as a result, the individual changes. So I don't know how much time I got left. I think this is about it. I want to thank you guys so much for having me on and allowing me to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. Our next speaker is Jenny Derr. I met probably through social media a long time ago. She has been affected by addiction and her own personal story, and then her and her family are doing great things for the community. So with that, it's all you, Jenny. Thank you.
Is still muted. There we go. Thank you, John, and thank you, Honesty, for letting me be a part of this tonight. So as Honesty said, my name is Jenny Derr. I'm a member of the community here in Richmond, and lost my oldest son, Billy, 4 years ago to a heroin overdose. And he had been clean and sober for about 15, 16 months. He relapsed in October and really then kind of struggled for the next 6 months. So he was home in April. He was living in Boston. He was home for the weekend. We had a great visit. He was present. He was active. He laughed a lot, not really demonstrating your typical behaviors of somebody in active addiction. He flew back to Boston on Tuesday morning. Told him that I loved him, asked him to please get a haircut, and he let me know when he landed, said he loved me, and that was the last time we talked. He overdosed that night. So we as a family, I have two other children. Billy had a younger sister and a younger brother. And as a family, we were all together the night we found out that he had passed away. And we decided right then and there that we were going to be transparent about his story. We were going to be transparent about his struggles. But what we really wanted people to know that he was way more than just his disease. We, wrote a very honest, I thought brutally honest, obituary that was shared far and wide. I mean, I got more comments than you can imagine. And that really kind of set me on a trajectory that I never thought I'd be on. I mean, I was always a person that didn't even like to call and ask what time a store closed. So the fact that I'm like here talking in front of people and have been, speaking in front of large audiences is kind of crazy. So one of the things that I also do, and Sam, your story resonated so much with me, is facilitate a Nar-Anon meeting. We meet on Wednesdays. And I always say we're 12-step light because we probably break some of the rules. Hopefully there's no like hardcore Nar-Anon people on, turn me into home office. But we do what works for us. So it's predominantly a group of parents. And one of the things that we say often is that our loved ones don't change until we change, because it really, truly is a family disease. And Sam, all the things that you said, man, I should have you come talk to our group because some of them could really stand to hear that. We have to change and recognize our role in our loved ones' recovery, and we have to allow them the opportunity to realize that they're strong enough to do it. And I think that one of the things about parenting somebody parenting somebody with substance use disorder, it is completely anti to all of your parenting instincts. So it's almost completely backwards. So if you feel like that's not really the right thing to do, I need to give them gas money, or I'm not going to give them money, but I'm going to buy their groceries. Well, all those things are affording them opportunity to use that money for drugs. So it's completely, like backwards day. So that's been really, really insightful. And I think, continuing to meet with these families and these groups has helped me so much. It helps me honor Billy every single day. One of the other things that I've been doing is I speak with a group that is funded by the U.S. Attorney's Office, and it's called Silent No More. We've spoken to about 7,000 middle and high school students across Central Virginia. And we kind of do a multifaceted approach. So there are two moms that have lost our children. And ironically, her name is Jennifer. I'm Jenny. She lost her son, Blaze. I lost my son, Billy. And we lost them exactly 1 month apart. She's also Black. So it's a very interesting contrast, I guess. So then we have a physician that talks about the neurobiology of the brain and addiction. We have a DEA agent that speaks, and we have a U.S. attorney that speaks. So we kind of go through the whole gamut of, the consequences and what addiction can do. And, obviously I have one of the worst outcomes. But I also think that by speaking and raising awareness, I'm continuing to spread hope, because I think there is always hope. And no matter how many times you might fall down, you always have that next day to get up and do the next right thing. Unfortunately for us, we didn't, reach that with Billy, but, I think that his legacy lives on, and we're able to honor him and all the things that we do. So I think recovery for families is really, really critical. When I started going to the Nar-Anon group that I attend still, there were 4 people that go, and we went because Billy was in treatment, and his treatment provider said, you all need to go to meetings too. And my first reaction was like, I don't have a problem, but at that point we were spending a lot of money. So if they said go, wear purple socks with yellow stripes, that's what we were going to do. So I went to a few different meetings and found this one that I really liked, seemed to resonate with. And, I would encourage folks that if you are the loved one, if you have a loved one that suffers from substance use disorder, find a meeting. And you might not find one that you click at the first time, so keep trying. There's tons of meetings, way more options than there ever used to be. You know, especially with this whole pandemic, there's so many options with Zoom meetings and things like that. But that meeting has steadily grown from 4 people to, I'd say we consistently probably have 18 to 22. We've maintained a really strong following and participation throughout this whole pandemic, so we do ours via Zoom. But it's really important for families to get the help and support that they need as well. Again, because if we don't change, our loved ones don't change either. So that's really, I think I'm about out of time. I don't know, I can't, it's hard to see the comments when you're talking. So again, I just appreciate the opportunity so much to be here. And if anybody has any questions or interested in anything, you know, find me on Facebook. But thanks so much, you guys.
Thank you, Jenny. And our last speaker before break is Miss PerCilla Zeno. She is, I've got her book because I'm reading it, and it's an interactive book, and I love it. It's I Am Healing, The 7 Secrets to Wellness and Self-Care. She is amazing. She was a volunteer at the McShin Foundation and helped our participants out so much, and me and her bonded and have a special relationship, I believe, and she's helped me out in many ways, especially here lately. So with that, I'll give it all to PerCilla Zeno. Thank you, PerCilla.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I'm PerCilla Zeno. I'm called the Healing Partner. I'm super grateful. Thank you so much to Care Talks for allowing me to share this platform. So I'd like to offer you some of my journey to recovery with regards to my mental health by sharing some of secret 1 of my book, I Am Healing, The 7 Secrets to Wellness and Self-Care. And I want to offer just some aha moments that I needed in order to get through my recovery. So the title of secret 1 is called Superheroes Don't Need Self-Care, But You Do. Warning, warning. Your pride will always try to stop you from asking for help. See that as a yellow sign and not a red one. I used to think I was Superwoman, so much so that I even bragged about it. Even if there was a crisis, I'd take control of everything and everyone involved in it. I take on whatever problems my family, my friends, my business, my clients had, making sure to find a solution and fix what I needed to fix. Yet while I was making sure everyone else was good, I wasn't taking care of me at all, or seeing my own delusion of having everything under control. I was what you might call a presser. I do what needed to be done and press on and press it down deep within, no matter what the need or the pain. It took a while before the result of that faulty thinking and the daily practice reared its pretty little head. And when it did, I quickly understood that I most certainly was not Superwoman. And what it took for me to understand this, to be completely honest with you, was a genuine nervous breakdown. Overwhelmed by my inability to be perfect and strong at all times, I became very fearful, trusting no one outside of the house I already knew. It got to the point where I didn't want to leave my room because I was afraid someone would hurt me. Make no mistake about it. The pressed down emotions I had been harboring since I was a wee little thing were now bubbling over. I stayed in my bedroom all day long, and if I left at all, I would not leave without my dog. What was happening in this emotional meltdown was that I had things I had endured as a child that had been surfacing uncontrollably. One by one, they crept up like thieves in the night and then strangled me. Intense pain in my upper back. Panic attacks began to grip me, and they were especially likely to happen in small, tight spaces. The event that triggered this initially was the reading of the transcript of my father's court trial in January of 1991, in which he was sentenced to life 20 years. I honestly thought I was over the triggers from anything that had to do with my father, so much so that I allowed him to send me the transcript to transfer to his lawyer. I had no idea that my curiosity to know the details of what happened in his trial would result in me experiencing this overwhelming amount of fear. And as I read through the account of charges against my father, I was hurled into a pit of painful memories, and I didn't know how to deal with it. This also became overwhelming for my husband because I questioned his every move, even something as simple as going to the restroom. After several weeks of living in a state of fear, I finally realized that I had to do something about my situation. My hesitation to share what was going on inside of me came from the pride in my own self-sufficiency. I was mortified of what my family, my friends, and those who looked up to me would think if they found out that I was weak now, and what people would say about me visiting a psychotherapist. You see, I was supposed to be the smart one, the pretty one, the strong businesswoman that had it all together. That was my illusion and my reality. Nonetheless, I couldn't very well live locked up inside four walls of my bedroom. So I mustered up enough courage to call my mother and my friend, and they were able to get me to go see a counselor. So I'm going to stop there because I'm kind of running out of time, but I just want to say that taking up my pen and writing out my truth helped me to realize that I don't have to try to be a superhero. That was a cover up for the toxic shame I was subjected to in my youth. Now, I'm not a superwoman. I'm a tenacious woman. I'm a passionate woman. I'm a loving woman. I have superwoman tendencies for sure. But even with that, I am not superwoman. And the fact is that I'm not her. And as soon as I left that state and dropped that illusion of being a superhero, I began to be more grounded, more able to stay in tune with my reality. Because the fact is that superheroes, they don't need a mental health day. They don't need a mani-pedi. They don't need a girls or boys night out. They don't need rest or recreation or even self-care. But for sure, human beings do. I hope you guys enjoyed my story. And if you'd like to visit my website, I am at thehealingpartner.com. I'm also at That Zen Life Wellness. So actually, you can go to thatzenlife.org, and you can follow me on Instagram at The Healing Partner or at That Zen Life Nonprofit. Thanks for letting me share, Honesty.
Well, we have a little bit of thank you so much, PerCilla. I love you. You're amazing. And Jenny and Sam, and it looks like Anthony jumped off. So we have a few more minutes, probably about 8 minutes, John, for some talk or question and answered. Do you want to talk about, you like to talk, right?
Well, no, I'm just going to remind folks, especially the ones in the recovery houses, don't run off. Go out, smoke, take a smoke break, behave yourself. We've got 4 powerful speakers on the back end. You don't want to miss them. And a lot of y'all, if y'all miss any of these, just want to remind everybody, this is a live stream, and you can watch it over and over and over on the Facebook page. It'll be there in perpetuity, or as long as we pay the Facebook page bill or however that works. But I'm just excited to be part of this event, and we're going to have many more. We may do these monthly, so y'all just stay tuned and be aware. And I don't mind taking a break a little bit on the early side, honestly.
Yeah, so we'll be back in 5 minutes to 6:45. So enjoy commercials by Todd Widows for the McShin Foundation.
It says 6:55 on the thing.
I know, but I'm doing 6:45.
All right.
One thing we do here, we always educate our participants. I want you to leave here after your 30, 60, 90 days or however long you stay and leave. I want you to be educated about the disease of addiction, about substance use disorders, what you need to do to personally recover. But I want you to know why we don't have the support we should have. I want you to know where all the funding goes, what the thinking is of our culture. why we're the way we are. And just for the record, everybody put their right hand up. I hereby deputize each and every one of you as an ambassador to be a face and voice of recovery from here on out. You've just been deputized. You just became ambassadors of a recovery movement, an authentic recovery movement. What authentic means is about people in recovery themselves. This is our call to action.
Well, magically, we came back a little bit early here. So much for our fearless co-host staying on top of things. But somebody knows what time of day it is. I hope you're all enjoying the show tonight. I think so far we've done a pretty good job, multiple pathways. And in case some of y'all aren't hearing what you need to be hearing, Honesty's getting ready to take it away and give you quality hearing material. Honesty, welcome back.
Hi, welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us. And we're still working with a little bit of technical difficulties. There we go. So our next speaker is a personal, really good friend. That's my son, Wyatt. He has been raised in recovery. He is the product of two people meeting in rehab, actually. And so our next speaker here is a really good friend of mine. He is one of my husband's best friends from hometown West Virginia, and he has been through the Mission Foundation and through one of our jail programs. So with that, he's actually at my house, so he's going to jump in the seat, and I give you Zach Ruble. There we go. Go, Zachary! It's
Have to adjust this. Honestly, it's a little short. Yeah, so she is correct. I am from West Virginia, so please don't hold that against me. So yeah, my pathway to recovery has been pretty twisted and a lot of turns, and I guess there is really no straight path in recovery for most people. It definitely was not the case with me. I guess my first experience with any kind of form of treatment, of trying, when I first kind of like realized, you know, I got a problem, I need to do something about it. You know, I can't stop using. It's adversely affecting my life. Was when I was 19 years old, and back then, you know, I thought as long as I just got rid of the physical addiction, everything would be okay. You know, I could handle the rest on my own. So I just pretty much went to a 5-day detox. There is not really a treatment setting. You just pretty much just laid around and got off of the substance for 5 days, and then you went back. And of course, you know, was raised by a single mother, and you know, who has no addiction and no experience with it. So, you know, in her mind, that was all I needed. You know, she thought everything was going to be okay. Well, of course it wasn't. Quickly began to sell drugs to support my habit, and ended up at the age of 19 with a 10-year sentence in federal prison. So I spent the majority of my 20s in federal prison, and towards the end of that sentence, I was fortunate enough to take a residential drug addiction program, which is kind of what they call a therapeutic community setting. It was 9 months long, which I did get a lot of tools. It wasn't necessarily 12-step based, but it did have a lot of similar information. But one of the things I failed to do after being released was building a strong recovery network. One of the reasons being I didn't necessarily want to identify with being an addict, especially letting other people know that fact. So I thought the cure for me was to just put it in the past, put it in the rearview mirror, put it all behind me, not worry about it, and surround myself with people that weren't necessarily in recovery, but weren't addicts either. Nevertheless, that was not successful for me. Once, you know, I began to make some bad decisions that eventually ended up leading to my relapse. The people that I had surrounded me with couldn't necessarily relate or, you know, offer much experience on how to get myself out of the situation, as well as me hiding it from most of them anyways. I wasn't going to reach out to them and let them know that I was struggling. I, you know, always wanted to put off the appearance that everything was okay. So fast forward about 6 years later of, you know, several different types of inpatient treatments and methadone and Suboxone and anything else you can think that was prescribed and self-prescribed by myself, was not acceptable. So about, I think it's been almost 2 years now. I came down here to Richmond to enter in the McShin program to try to give it a shot down here, away from West Virginia. As Nancy explained, Adam, my childhood friend, which is her husband, is my connection to McShin, and I knew I had worked for him and his wife. So I figured, why not for me too? Well, unfortunately, I wasn't able to sit still long enough to get a message of recovery. I found myself in jail again for a year, which was the best thing that could have happened to me in hindsight. While I was in there, the McShin program came in to the jail. Most of the people that did were volunteers that came in. And that helped me a lot to see that people were genuinely trying to help me with no ulterior motive. At that point, it kind of planted the seed. I started to buy in that it could work for me, and that people actually did want to help me if I was willing to reach out and let them help me. So it was October 7th of last year. I was released from Pamunkey. There was someone from McShin that came in and picked me up from the jail. I came back and moved into, went bed-to-bed transfer and moved into one of the recovery residences. And this time around, the most helpful thing for me was building a very strong recovery network. So when I begin to struggle, I can reach out. I feel supported. People are willing to do anything as long as I'm willing to put in the effort as well. 3 weeks ago, I moved, transferred out of McShin. I'm still living with someone that's in recovery. So the biggest thing for me, my pathway is to stay surrounded by people that have been where I've been and know how to get out of there. So I think my time's running out here. I appreciate y'all letting me speak. And I thank McShin for letting me speak.
Well, Zach, thanks for sharing, man. Zach, good job as usual. We really appreciate that. Man, we're moving right along here tonight so far. I mean, I'm really impressed with the speed and of course, the internet is pretty fast. Our next speaker is Dr. Peter Breslin, a young man I've had the privilege of not only working with professionally, but actually being educated by a good doctor. See, sometimes I'll put my will on the doc and he don't like my will, so he puts it back on me. And he's actually made a much better hope dealer out of myself. So I'm always grateful for the doc for keeping me straight and honest and always willing to help educate me, make me a better person. And I don't want to take up any more of his time. Doc, good to have you on the show tonight. You're up next, buddy. Take it away.
Thanks, John. I like the introduction. I think that goes well for us. I have a special guest myself, by the way. This is Gaia, the daughter. She's going to be the main speaker tonight, all right? Just kidding. So basically, like John was saying, I'm a medical director, medical advisor, history with of psychiatry and double boarded in addiction medicine. And, it's kind of listening to what everybody was saying. I really appreciated PerCilla's view on therapy. It's a really major area that a lot of people disregard or don't really emphasize a lot. And I think that needs to be kind of said over and over again, to be honest. Nobody's perfect. And also just kind of Zachary's point of view of essentially, a lot of these short-term programs where it's, it's just kind of treat and detox and then nothing else. You end up just kind of not really treating any part of the disease. So what I wanted to kind of include in what I was going to say was just from a clinical perspective, the different kind of arenas that I've worked in, and really kind of emphasize the differences, because there's a whole spectrum of addiction services, and from kind of the most acute, just kind of an inpatient addiction just an inpatient psychiatric stay. That's kind of one of the where most people kind of get in and kind of get their first grasp of trying to get clean. It's usually somebody, trying to just find a safe place, essentially endorsing suicide and just kind of getting into a safe place. The problem with that is there's not really any addiction treatment on an inpatient psych unit. Insurance is a huge negative, and after 3 days, kick you out, which isn't even enough time to really even fully detox. And you get a little bit of therapy, but you don't really get any kind of legitimate treatment. And the other area that I've worked in a lot is, a 30-day inpatient rehab, which is obviously next step up. But one of the big things with all of this stuff is there's no one way to kind of say, this is the best care for this person. This is definitely going to work. And I think this is really kind of the biggest reason why this talk is important, because there's no one way to kind of fit anybody into a kind of a one method works. But in inpatient 30-day rehabs, their success rate is definitely not 100%. And I continually see kind of people come back over and over again. And really, I hate to kind of get into the insurance, discussion and just kind of the monetary part of addiction treatment. But, a lot of times it's more for monetary reasons. And my pet peeve with that is just, families get depleted of money. And one big thing is that, families need to realize they need to make kind of the best bang for their buck when it comes to addiction treatment, and inpatient rehabs, are not that successful in the grand scheme of things. They do obviously help a good number of people, but there's no guarantee if you pay $15,000 your kids, there's no guarantee that they're going to be clean after that. Another big area, obviously, is I have my own kind of outpatient treatment. Basically, we're an OBOT, and essentially that's not perfect either. I'm not endorsing I have the perfect way of getting people clean, because what ends up happening is some people are ready to get better, other people are not. And I think it's a huge point that we need to emphasize for this too, is that at the end of the day, a lot of this comes down to, are you ready? Is it an intrinsic value that you want to get clean, or or some kind of external action? Once intrinsic, your likelihood of actually being clean exponentially goes up. And we all know that, whether we realize it or not. One of my kind of, not pet peeves or whatever, but, when somebody says I'm doing it for my kid, that sounds great, but that's, it doesn't mean you're going to be clean after 30 days, 90 days, 120 days. You basically just kind of pick something external to you, and it doesn't necessarily mean you have that intrinsic motivation to get clean. Other areas that we don't really consider kind of pathways of recovery is jail, which is really sad, because there's a HARP program, and Rico has a program. But, it's unfortunate that to consider jail is actually a pathway to recovery, but it is. And unfortunately, jails have started to catch up and try to, do the right thing by providing addiction treatment so they can decrease recidivism and really decrease their budget, honestly, long run, which, that's what they should be looking at. But, obviously there's also kind of a view on short-term budgets. And again, there's so many other ways, just kind of simple AA. Some people can just not even join a recovery house and just go to AA meetings and get clean because of self-intrinsic motivation. And and again, like I said, recovery houses is actually a big arena for being clean. And one of the big things is just that community approach that McShin does really well. Which I think is fantastic. I think that's where McShin really kind of takes it up a few notches, because that's essentially the basis of their model, and supporting each other. And and even through this COVID, it's been difficult all around, and they've been able to kind of make do with trying to make sure that value of community is not lost, whether it's making sure people are doing live streaming stuff and making sure at least the houses are cohesive in nature. But I think I might be running out of time. But I think those are the biggest things that I really want to emphasize. There's no one recovery, and no matter what we take to recovery, that's awesome. And and for families, I would say try to find the most cost-effective way to get there, because getting into recovery is a long, arduous step. So thank you all for having me, and it was a pleasure being here.
I love the audience, Todd. We have Todd Widows in the back, and he does all of our virtual stuff, and he is amazing. And to throw in them claps is the super coolest thing ever. So thank you. And thank you, Dr. Breslin. We love you at McShann, and we all love you all around. You're an amazing doctor, and you have so much empathy for us with addiction. So thank you so much. Our next speaker, I got to meet virtually, actually, an amazing conversation. And she's all the way from Vegas. And yeah, our next two speakers are from Vegas, and you can recover in Vegas. So that is amazing. So our next speaker is LaVatta Palm, and I'm going to hand it over to her to share her talk. So thank you, LaVatta.
Thank you, Honesty and John. Like Honesty said, my name is LaVatta Palm, and I am a person in long-term recovery. And I am also a survivor of the opioid epidemic. And what that means is that I have not found it necessary to use any mind-altering substances since February of 2012. And I also get to work at a recovery community center here in Las Vegas, Nevada, by the name of Foundation for Recovery. And I get to provide peer support. And so what peer support is, like some of you may have heard earlier, it is non-clinical support. I share my lived experience to help other individuals find their own pathways into recovery. So that being said, my process began around 2010 when my three sons, they had wandered outside after me and their father was in the home sleeping from an opioid intoxication. And the Department of Family Services needed to step in to care for our children while I needed to work on myself and get some support for the substance use disorder that I had developed. And obviously, I was pretty offended because I personally didn't feel that I had a problem, of course. Lucky for me that they suggested that because that has really changed my life and my family's life tremendously for the better. It wasn't easy for me to access services. So back then so there's this phone book. Some of you may be familiar with what the phone book is. So I would spend time looking through the phone book for an organization that would be able to help me, with this substance use disorder. So finally, I found a community-based organization, and they would take me on a sliding fee scale. And I was still a little reluctant, but like I said, I wanted my sons back. So I went ahead and went, through the process. So that was my first pathway into recovery. And I'm very grateful that I was finally able to access that organization. So there, I started to develop some tools, for myself and understand about the disease of addiction, like what it was doing to my brain. And because when my mind wasn't so suppressed, I was wondering, like, why was I making the choices that I was making? And realistically, I wasn't able to make accurate choices because of what addiction does to the brain. So I'm learning all this good new, fine information, and I started to develop some like self-esteem. You know, I started to develop some self-love, and I would hear things within that environment like, you know, I needed to have a support system. I needed to have a relapse and prevention plan, which is which is what we call a recurrence of use plan today. So I developed that plan, and that pathway was about to end. So part of part of my plan was that I was going to go to the 12-step meetings in order to help further build my foundation of recovery. And so in there, I'm meeting new people, you know, learning about myself, self-love, what it looks like to be a good mom, because I really love my sons. And like I said, I wanted them back. And what I really discovered is that although I wanted them back, that process was really for me to become the best person that I was able to be. So I kind of stopped focusing on that as a goal and start focusing on getting better. And I started to feel better. Life started to improve. And before I knew it, I was reunified with my sons, and they were happy. I was happy. And then their father, he was actually able to find recovery. And I also learned that my recovery needed to be separate from his recovery. And that was really like an aha moment for me, because I was under the impression that we should do everything together, but realistically that wasn't gonna work in recovery. So he finds recovery, I have recovery, the boys are home, and life is really good. But along that way, I was wondering, like, I wish I had known someone that had gone through this process, like, you know, needing to find a pathway to recovery, having Department of Family Services involvement, and it wouldn't have made my process so difficult. And what I was actually asking for at that moment, at that time, was peer support. And there wasn't anyone there, you know, that I had known of that had gone through a similar situation. But today I get to be that someone. So now when individuals come to the Recovery Community Center here at Foundation for Recovery, I'm able to share my experience with my pathway to recovery, as well as laying out other pathways to recovery and letting them, you know, choose for themselves. And then also I help them be able to develop the resources that they need to sustain that recovery, which is called Recovery Capital. So 2020, life is good. My family's happy. I just had a 2020 graduate. So one of those young men that wandered outside that day, and they actually get to do peer support, because this moment of shame and guilt and embarrassment, it has come a source of hope for others, that they too can recover from substance use disorders, and their families are able to live, you know, whole and happy. So like I said, my 2020 graduate, so super proud of him. He's working, he's been driving since he was 16. And as you can well imagine, the insurance is through the roof. But guess what? Making better choices. The mind isn't suppressed. So hey, he's worth it. And my other sons, one of my sons, he's in accelerated English and reading and math, super smart, now going. And then my other son, he likes to draw, he likes music. And their dad, he actually gets to work and share his experience with other men that have also, you know, lost their children, needing a pathway into recovery. And today, life is beautiful, and I wouldn't have it any other way. And also here, I get to train craft facilitators, which is community reinforcement and family training, to also offer some family support so they too can heal, as well as the individual that is looking for the pathway into recovery. I get to facilitate a trauma-informed women's support group here at the Foundation for Recovery. It's not another non-clinical support piece. And also, every month, I get to put on these women empowerment activities here offered at Foundation for Recovery, so women can find a place where they're able to build community, where they can start the process of building that support system. And also, hopefully, they're able to develop some purpose in life, like I have. So my solution to recovery is to the disease of addiction is to be open-minded, get a strong support system, some people that's not gonna be afraid to, tell you the truth and be willing to hear that truth. And that is definitely my solution to recovery. And thank you, Honesty and John, again for having me on today.
Great job, LaVatta. I tell you, every time I go out to Las Vegas, I feel like I'm going to my home group away from home group. When I go into Foundations Recovery and I see John, he gives me a big old hug, man. And you see Stuart and Heidi and Donna and Ryan. I mean, it's just an amazing feeling. And that's one of the blessings of long-term recovery. You get to meet folks all over the world, basically, because I do got friends all over the world. And our next speaker, John, I know he's chomping at the bit, man. He was the first guy to show up tonight, man, and he was the last speaker. But John, I mean, I'm just so happy to be your friend. I'm blessed I'm in your life, man, and you really just you're one of the guys that makes me get real excited about going to Vegas. Don't get me wrong, I love Stuart and Heidi, man, but when you give me that hug and you make me feel like I'm at my home group, you're just a second to none, man. But take it away, John. What do you got for us?
All right, just mic check 1 2 1 2. Hopefully we're good. It looks like we're good. So my name is John Newell, and I'm a person in long-term recovery. And what that means for me today is I haven't used any drugs or any alcohol since May 25th, 2001. But I was thinking about this as all the other speakers were sharing. I haven't been arrested since 1994. I haven't done anything. I haven't put anything harmful in my body by way of food or soda pops since probably about the middle of February. I found out I was type 2 diabetic. Wasn't borderline, I'm type 2. So needless to say, as far as a pathway, 8 minutes. Okay, I could do this, y'all. I'm gonna stay focused, John. And thank y'all so much for asking us to join you guys on this. It really means a lot. First time I remember being introduced to you, John, it was at an ARCO in DC. And I purposely went into one of your workshops to hear what you were sharing about. And it really touched me and moved me. And, I got more time. So it really moved me. And I felt like I was connected to you at that moment, John, back in DC, whatever year that was. It might have been 2016 or so. But I'm going to go back a little bit and share with y'all what my pathway and my experience has been like. No need to go into a drug log. I'm sure everybody that's logged on here know what it's like to find ways and means to get more, right? I know I do. So the reality for me is when it was time for me to come out of the cold, per se, or so to speak, my family didn't have access to $30,000 for 30 days of treatment. To be quite honest with y'all, when it was time for me to surrender, right? Like I remember my first child was born in 94. And I remember in 94, I was in Vegas on the run from California. I had warrants and whatnot because I wasn't going to do right. And I couldn't pee clean and none of that stuff. I'm sure a lot of y'all can relate to that. So I did what a good person who's running from life does. And I did the geographic and I thought, okay, I'm gonna go back to Las Vegas. My mom was there. She'll put me up and I can get myself together, and I came out here and got off to a good start. I was always good at getting off to a good start working. And the young man in the apartment downstairs was dealing drugs. And I remember very distinctly thinking, man, that joker don't know how to sell no rocks. I didn't show him how to sell some rocks. So I remember making that decision to quit my job, take my last paycheck, and I was going to buy me a package because I still thought that I was the monkey that could sell bananas, right? So needless to say, I bought the package, and I tell y'all, I didn't sell not one piece of that package. It all went up in smoke. And I remember getting to a place where I really had burned every bridge. I'm in Vegas. The majority of my family's here. And my family kind of had a little meeting. They had a little powwow, and they was like, hey, John's in pretty bad shape. We need to do something. And what I hear about this meeting, because obviously I wasn't there, one of my family members shared it. It was kind of like, well, he can't come here. He can't come here. He can't come here. So they came up with a bright idea to get me a bus ticket and send me back to Richmond, California, not Virginia, Richmond, California, East Bay area. And that's where my dad was still at the time. So that was the best that they could come up with. And that was sufficient in that moment, put me on the bus. They let me take a shower and wash my clothes. And I got back out there. And I remember not understanding or knowing what it was I was dealing with, which was the disease of addiction. And I just thought that, the party that I had started, I didn't know how to quite stop it or turn it off, and I ended up, I'll fast forward a little bit. I ended up going into a program. And it's funny because sometimes in my story, I'll say treatment, but really it wasn't treatment. It was a rescue mission, a Union Gospel mission. It was a discipleship program. It was an 18-month program. It didn't cost me nothing. All I had to do was my part. And I remember going into that program and I dug in with both feet. This was probably like 96 or so. And graduated the program, transitioned into transitional living with them, started working because I was at that phase of my program where it was time for me to go out and get a job. I never forget I was working at the UA in Berkeley, California, not far from Cal Berkeley University, and moved into the transitional living. And at 2.5 years, they ended up hiring me on as staff. And one day, out of the blue, I was on my way to Oakland to go pick up a young lady and go on a date. And out of the blue, I was like, I want to drink. Now, I wasn't programming. I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't going to meetings. All I was doing was working and going to church. I ain't knocking that, but I'm just sharing my experience. And I knew exactly what drink I wanted. I commenced to go to the liquor store, get that drink. By the time I left Richmond and got to Oakland, I knew baby smoked a little marijuana. So we went and got some marijuana. Within a week, I was back doing what it was I really wanted to do, which wasn't drinking or smoking weed. And I remember running for a while and finally going to my employer and saying like, hey, I messed up again, guys. I need some help. And they were kind of like, well, we knew. We were just kind of waiting to see how far you would run with it. They were like, well, what do you want to do? I was like, well, I need to get back on. I need to get myself together. And they said, take a few days off. Let us put our heads together and we'll figure out something. I ended up going to Portland Rescue Mission. Another staff member, myself, drove from California to Portland, Oregon. And that was probably one of the most beautiful drives I've ever taken in my life. They embraced me, put me right to work, put me in their program. And I just had to get back to baby and back to Oakland. I was back in Oakland within 90 days, and thus the cycle continued. So fast forward, I moved back out to Vegas in 2000, actually the last week of 99. And I distinctly remember getting off to a good start like I always do and falling and scraping my knees again. And I was introduced to a 12-step fellowship, which happens to be my pathway. And remember going to a meeting, getting a book, a phone list, took that stuff back home and put it on my counter, and I kept on doing what I was doing. But I do know that when that time came, the last time I used was in B Bayou, Louisiana. I was down in the sticks, in the woods, where my daddy's from. I was down there on a little family reunion, and I remember running around back in the woods with my uncle in an old F-150 with no front end on it, using drugs. I embarrassed myself. I embarrassed my daddy, his better half at the time. And I remember telling her before I got ready to get on that plane to come back to Vegas that this was it. I was done. I couldn't keep on going on like this. And that was my surrender date, May 25th, 2001. Got back into town, went to a meeting, raised my hand, identified as new, got plugged in and connected right away because I knew from my experience prior with going to meetings that if I wasn't willing to do what was suggested, that the freedom that those folks were experiencing, it wasn't going to be available to me. So I jumped in with 2 feet. Fast forward some more. Working for a big box retailer for probably about 12 years of my early recovery. And I remember saying like, I want to go to school and I want to be a counselor. I want to be a therapist. And I got real comfortable at big box retail. I was making good money. I was good at what I did. I'm a people person. So I was dealing with a lot of people. And that never happened. Like I never enrolled in school. I never went back to school and ended up separating from them, got married. Fast forward, working at a local treatment center, and somebody from the Foundation for Recovery comes in to give a presentation to the clinical staff there about, what Foundation for Recovery does and what peer support is, blah, blah, blah. Now, I knew this individual. He's one of my predecessors from the 12-step community that I'm a part of. And on his way out, he says to me, he says, you'd be a good coach. I kind of looked around like, who are you talking to, dude? He was talking to me. So I ended up taking the training. I started volunteering, and it was like, oh my God, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I want to do. Started volunteering in 2015, managed to go to DC for Unite to Face Addiction. And once I started getting exposed to this recovery movement on a national level, it kind of just sucked me in right away. 2016, I ended up getting hired on as staff as a peer support specialist. And man, all I can say to y'all now is that I look back and I know everything happens for a reason, but now I'm at a place in my life where I finally understand what it means to be a beacon of hope or a beacon of light in the community, right? So like, I wear my recovery out loud. I don't know if y'all can see it or not, but the shirt says recovery works. I'm living proof. I am living proof. People that know me from way back when I was toe up from the flow up, they know that something different happened. It's funny. I used to go and visit the Bay Area a lot, and people see me, and the first thing they say, man, where you been in the pen? No, I just kind of left the block and I kind of started making some different choices in my life. Keep me on track with time, honesty. And now I look up and I'm in a position where the community I live in, right, obviously professionally, but the community I operate in, right, for my own personal recovery, people come to me. I've had to learn how to set up boundaries and put boundaries in place. But I think the thing that definitely has been one of the biggest assets for me is the fact that I get to be there for my family. I remember when I needed some help and I wanted some help, and my family genuinely didn't know what to do. Like, I didn't know what detox was. I didn't know what treatment was. I didn't know what any of that was. And what I've also learned being involved with this work and in this movement is that the way that I got into recovery may not necessarily be the path that might work for somebody else. So once I really started digging into the work, I understood that all I knew was what I knew when it was time for me to get clean and what my pathway was. And what peer support and this work has done for me is it's literally opened me up. There are so many different pathways that people can use to get into recovery. And one of my biggest roles as a peer support specialist is to support the individuals that I'm working with and meet them wherever they may be, right? Wherever they may be, and help them figure out what it is they want to do. Because at the end of the day, it's about what they want. And it's about me finding a way and connecting them with the resources to help them achieve that, point blank. I'll get ready to wind down here. Cool. Thank you. Get ready to wind down here. Thank everybody so much that shared before me. LaVatta, thank you so much. LaVatta, you've been rocking with me for these last few years, and you know what the journey's been like with my teenage son. And he's actually class of 2020 as well. And He actually will get his diploma July 10th. So I'm pretty excited that because of recovery, that I'm in a position to do for my son what my dad did for me back in 91 when I graduated high school. Yeah, I dated myself. This is real great. That's not died in there, nothing. It's for real. Is we gonna throw down for him? I'm gonna get on the grill and we're gonna have us some potato salad, some beans, and some, all that other stuff that we do at them barbecues. And I'm grateful that because of recovery, with all the challenges that I've had in the last few years with my son, I didn't kill him and I didn't let him kill me, So once again, I want to thank John and Honesty and the McShin Foundation. Super excited to be involved with this. And I'm so grateful at what this process has done for me in my life and that I'm able to share it with people wherever I go and whatever I do. Thank you so much, you guys.
That was absolutely awesome, John, man. I love you guys so much. I'm listening to all the speakers speak tonight, and I reflect back on my own journey. I got clean in 1982, and back then, it was like three major pathways to recovery. There were the two 12-step pathways, AA or NA, and there was a faith-based Christian, had Salvation Army and whatever. And they did have like clubhouses, like 12-step clubhouses, but there was nothing like what we got today, percolating and emerging all across America, like Foundations for Recovery, McShin, but all across America. If anybody that see the Anonymous people, that film, they'll see those recovery centers. And those recovery centers is like taking the recovery journey up a notch on steroids. Because now individuals can come into these recovery centers, be met by a peer, and we can help guide these people into a pathway they're comfortable with, that they want to take it to the next level. And I'll even go out on a limb and say, in the Richmond community, we've been able to educate some addiction doctors, drug courts, the criminal justice system, the jails. We got tremendous sober living capacity, recovery residence capacity. We have multiple recovery centers. I mean, Richmond should be a model. I think the rest of the country should mirror. Of course, the only thing we lack is consistent funding, of course. But you know what? We seem to be getting by. But I think these talks are incredibly powerful. I think as time goes on, especially with COVID-19 and the virtual world that we've all getting used to, I think this is a bit of the future here. So everybody that showed up tonight, I'm really proud and honored to be part of all this. And I'm feeling on top of the world right now. I feel like I just went to a meeting and I got a hit I didn't expect to get, So I'm thinking about going out to eat now, So Honesty, any announcements we got? Anything we need to talk about before we close?
Let me just make it longer so you can't eat. Yeah, so we are thinking, yes, definitely with the COVID. I just want to thank all of our speakers and our guests and everyone in live comments. John and I will discuss, thanks, Dr. Breslin, we love you. We'll discuss the date. Yes, PerCilla, thank you, girl. I'm glad the internet worked out. And for July's date. So our next one is 100% going to be virtual as well. So thank you for coming out. And I'll have that date up on our Care Talks page soon. So yeah, just thank everyone. Have a great, safe night. And, love one another and be kind. Peace.
Good night.
McShin Foundation is Virginia's leading peer-to-peer recovery organization. If you or a loved one is struggling with addiction, let us get you connected. We can help you build a solid foundation through recovery. Here at the McShin Foundation, we are committed to healing families and saving lives.
One thing we do here, we always educate our participants. I want you to leave here after your 30, 60, 90 days or however long you stay and leave. I want you to be educated about the disease of addiction, about substance use disorders, what you need to do to personally recover. But I want you to know why we don't have the support we should have. I want you to know where all the funding goes, what the thinking is of our culture, why we're the way we are. And just for the record, everybody put it right in. I hereby deputize each and every one of you as an ambassador to be a face and voice of recovery from here on out. You've just been deputized. You just became ambassadors of a recovery movement, an authentic recovery movement. What authentic means is by people in recovery themselves. This is our call to action.